California seems to be a place common sense often goes to die, but there might be legislation moving through the state legislature that could actually bring some semblance of logic and reason to the question of whether or not men should continue to play in girls' sports. You may think that's not a big thing, but in California, it's actually more frequent than you would think. The masterful Charlie Kirk schooled Governor Gavin Newsom on this point and seemed to get a concession.
So like you right now should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports,
right.
that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
No, and I appreciate.
But like, would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. It is an issue of fairness.
So
it's deeply unfair.
Would you speak out against this young man, A.B. Hernandez, who right now is going to win the state championship in the long jump? I can see you wrestling with it.
No, I'm not wrestling. I'm not wrestling with the fairness issue. I totally agree with you.
Even though Newsom sees the unfairness, Sacramento's worst liberals with power seem to be willing at times to risk federal funding to maintain this incredibly grotesque practice. California has plenty to do without picking this fight. They could clean up the homelessness, deport their illegals, back the police, and remove the dead trees to stop wildfires. But no, instead, they want to make sure someone with a Y chromosome is spiking a volleyball in some middle school girl's face. For the party of radical feminism, this isn't just anti-democratic, it's anti-female. What's next, Governor Newsom? Handing out trophies to men in dresses while Title IX burns? Over 70% of Americans, even Democrats, say no to this nonsense per a New York Times poll, but Newsom is too busy pushing his 2028 presidential headshot to really care about how this circumstance plays nationwide. He's got to appeal to a very leftist base in the Democratic Party that seems to be even moving further left. This is California today, a lawless, woke wasteland where illegals get health care and girls get benched. Joining us now, one of our favorite California Assemblymen fighting to restore common sense in the Golden State, Joe Patterson. Assemblyman, thanks for rejoining the program. What legislation is moving in Sacramento right now that could impact Title IX?
Yeah, well, there are two bills moving forward that would make sure that girls' sports are for girls. I mean, it's very simple. That's what they would do.
And how frequent or common is this practice of men participating in women's sports, and are they successful in California?
You know, people think it's an outlier, that it's something that doesn't really happen, but it's actually quite a regular occurrence. I mean, in my district, there have been multiple individuals born as boys playing in girls' sports. Just last year, a constituent of mine who should have won a state championship was deprived of that because they lost to a boy. So it's actually quite common. I mean, I don't want to say every team or anything like that, but I mean, if you're playing youth sports, you will come across this.
I was surprised when we got word that these two bills that seem to be backed by science and logic and reason, and even the thinking we heard Governor Newsom express on Charlie Kirk's on his podcast interview with Charlie Kirk. But Democrats control Sacramento. How is it that these Republican bills are getting a hearing and an opportunity to be voted on?
Well, what they're going to do is they're going to stack the deck. They're going to bring a lot of people to the hearing to make sure that, Republicans look like some sort of extremists or something like that. But I think what's important is that Republicans advocate for treating everybody with dignity and respect. And that includes girls in our communities who should be entitled to championships and things like that. But it's just this week, we brought forward some bills onto the assembly floor these bills actually, to make sure girls' sports are for girls. And the Democrats unanimously turned it down. Not a single person joined with Republicans.
But so in this upcoming legislative activity, you don't expect on this committee that a single Democrat will vote for the Republican bills?
I would be shocked. I mean, I feel like it's dead on arrival. I would be very surprised if a Democrat joined with Republicans to vote for it. I mean, it's just...
Well, in that case, hold on, because in that case, what we're describing is just political theater. The Democrats are putting on political theater, and that's actually quite interesting to me, because this sounds like the theater I like to go to, the men are men and the women are women. In this particular political theater, you may have something different. Who do you expect, and what do you expect to show up for this political theater that Democrats are putting on?
Well, I do have to say a lot of people, my district is close to Sacramento. And so I would be surprised if dozens, if not hundreds of people from my district show up in support of this legislation. But also, I think a lot of the extremist groups, the left extremist groups, are going to show up en masse. And I believe the Capitol will be filled with hundreds, if not thousands of people rallying against this legislation to try to, but people in Sacramento, they live in this bubble. They don't, it's almost like they don't go out and talk with other people. I mean, you showed the poll in the intro here, 70, almost 80% of people, Republicans and Democrats, agree, hey, let's give our girls an opportunity to win championships.
Title IX was a controversial issue when I was in high school, but for very different reasons. There were people who supported boys' sports who didn't think that less revenue generating enterprises like girls softball or girls track and field should get the same resources, the same quality bus rides, the same stays in hotels on away games. And that was the big fight. Now the fight about Title IX is with a lot of Republicans just saying we want to preserve it. Are there any old school Democrats who even hearken back to the original purpose and meaning of Title IX to give equal opportunity to women?
Not in the California legislature. No, they don't exist. I'm not saying that everybody's a bad person or anything like that in the legislature, but the party infrastructure, that's what's important to understand. It's not the individuals in the legislature. You literally cannot get nominated to your seat in the legislature from the Democratic Party if you don't support this extremist policy of the progressive left in their party.
So I know with such a small minority, you guys you're like the 300. You're having to fight off an advancing horde most days, but I'm sure there are some seats that you're looking to pick off in the coming midterm elections where there might be a vulnerable Democrat. And you said when there was a floor vote on some of these matters, all of the Democrats were voting to keep men in women's sports. Do you think when Republicans are out there communicating on behalf of challengers, taking on some of these incumbent Democrats, that that'll present a vulnerability that is poignant with the voters?
Absolutely, because we Republicans, we look at the data and we try to speak to voters at what's important to them. And in fact, we picked up 2 seats in the legislature this year in Democrat majority, Latino majority districts, because our candidates, who are, by the way, were Latinos, are talking directly to the Hispanic population there. So Democrats can continue speaking to their base, but we're going to speak to the people of California.
Well, I think that Democrats are purposefully using this opportunity to try to create a circus and a carnival around Sacramento, and I actually think this is going to boomerang. I think regular folks, persuadable voters, maybe ticket splitters who vote Democrat in national elections will look at this and say, do I really want my state elected lawmakers making it more challenging for my daughter to achieve greatness in athletics? We're glad you're fighting on the side of science and gender and reason. Assemblyman Joe Patterson, thanks for joining us on the program again.
Thanks, Matt.